One chaotic Friday evening, a waiter was serving tables. The beautiful weather had encouraged the patrons of the restaurant to eat outside on the patio. He was completely frazzled as he was the only waiter who was working outside. As he continued to serve the tables, he could not help but notice mysterious eyes that were following his every move. The mysterious stranger received his bill and left abruptly. When the server picked the bill up, what he saw had him frantically reaching for his phone. 31-year-old David Fabila was struggling. He lives in Sacramento, California, and was expecting his fourth child. He worked in the evenings at House of Oliver, in Roseville, a wine bar. On a Friday last August, he knew something was up while he was working his usual evening shift. The bar was packed to the rafters, and David was completely rattled. But things only got stranger from there. That evening, the temperature was so perfect that people were seated outside, soaking up the balmy weather. Friday nights were always chaotic for the House of Oliver staff, and David had been asked to leave bartending and be the night server for the outside section. To his surprise, it became busier and busier. Then, suddenly, the mysterious stranger had arrived. David, trying to keep everything under control, asked management for some help. They were severely understaffed that evening and couldn't give him a reprieve. David had just come from his other job and was totally exhausted. He was having a rough night. But what he didn't know was that he would receive a surprise he did not expect on this hot summer's evening. David Fabila was too busy tending to his other tables, so he didn't even notice when the young mystery man sat down at a patio table outside in his section. Of course, David had absolutely no idea that this one guest, Stephen Bear, would turn his night right around on its head. David Fabila, whose family was growing, had taken on his second job at the House of Oliver because he had needed extra cash. The service industry is tough and incredibly demanding. It takes a lot of backbone to serve orders all day and at all hours. David also had a day job as a bar porter at a casino resort, but in all the years he had worked night shifts as a server, he had never expected something like this to ever happen to him. In the service industry, people don't understand just how crucial tips are in order for servers to survive. They often live off these tips. While servers are used to people leaving good tips, average tips, and even some downright awful tips, Stephen Bear, the mysterious stranger, had something up his sleeve when he sat down in David's section. David was running ragged, not even knowing if he was getting orders right. But the evening continued to become more and more frantic by the second. David didn't realize that his mysterious onlooker was in attune to every move he made. Stephen Bear finally finished his meal and was waiting for David to approach him. David noticed Stephen Bear asking for the check, so he rushed to give it to the mysterious stranger and then moved on to serve another table. There were a lot more guests that needed service. David knew that he had to go and close the bill from the stranger's table quickly, so he finished up with his other customers and started to head in that direction. David noticed that the stranger, Bear, had left suddenly when he returned to collect the bill. David thought initially that perhaps he had left the exact cash for the check. But usually, people asked for change or for the credit card machine, but that wasn't the case this time. When David opened the bill, he found an incredible note and an unbelievable surprise. I pulled the check out to close it, and when I pulled it out, that's when I saw everything. Their bill was very expensive. It was like $190 something. That's exactly the tip they left me. David explained later. Stephen Bear had left almost $200 in the tip line, which matched the bill. The sum of the bill totaled almost $400. With the bill, there was a note. It read, "We're young, but we're worth serving." David Fabila, in a state of utter disbelief, had to reread the bill again. Unless you work in the service industry, you don't really understand how much tips mean to a server, to a bartender, David told CBS. Initially, David had thought this must be a mistake and tried to find the mystery man. He simply could not believe his eyes. Surely the young stranger had made a mistake? David checked and rechecked the figures just to make sure. Then, he began to search for the young man. Soon after, David had finally tracked down the stranger, Stephen Bear, who was a 24-year-old college student at Sacramento State. They arranged to meet up, and David couldn't thank him enough. It was a kind gesture that had come just when David had needed it the most. He told Stephen how eternally grateful he was. Then David Fabila posted on his Facebook wall, "Thank you again to everyone who supported Stephen, and I'm glad this story was told. He is so young and just an intern who goes to college." Stephen Bear used to work at a diner as a server, so he knew exactly what David must have been going through on that chaotic evening at the wine bar. He felt that it had been fair and right to reward David for all his hard work. "I've been in his shoes before too. I work as a waiter in a diner in Texas, so I decided to show him what he did as appreciated, Stephen Bear later explained to CBS. The Tip the Bill challenge has become a viral phenomenon, and a lot of people have decided to match their tips to the bill, meaning that their servers receive a 100% tip. In this particular case, however, Stephen wasn't participating in the challenge. He had no idea that David was struggling financially and was soon to become a new father. He did it because he wanted to fairly reward him for his efforts. Additionally, he also had something that he was celebrating. Stephen, just completing his senior year of college, wanted to celebrate by doing something kind. I had this money that I didn't expect to have, so I wanted to share some of that, he explained. I didn't plan on it. It happened. I didn't know his situation either. I am just really glad I did it. I'm in a position where I have the resources and luck to do this, so why not just go for it? David just could not thank Stephen enough. You totally just made everything so much better, and like I said, you have no idea what you did for me and what made it so great, that he didn't know anything about me, David said when asked what he wanted to say to Stephen after his kind gesture. But just why has the Tip the Bill movement become so popular? Eater estimated that a huge number of people, 40%, are unaware that they should be tipping between 15 and 20%. This may not sound like much, but it makes a huge difference when you take into account the many people in the service industry who are compensated by law. People expect good service but aren't prepared to reward it, and the Tip the Bill challenge is a response to this current mindset. People such as bartenders and servers who are working in the service industry are paid a fraction of the normal minimum wage because they are expected to make up for it with tips. Sometimes they do, and can even make more money, but it is generally unequal across the board. In the United States, there is something called the tipped minimum wage, but not many are aware of it. This is why people are calling for a system overhaul. In 2015, a prominent New York City restaurateur, Danny Meyer, eliminated tipping at all the restaurants he oversees. This indicates that people are starting to become aware of the unfairness involved in the tipped wage. I just decided, instead of blaming the tipping system for what didn't seem fair or right, why not take it into our own hands? Danny said. Perhaps one day, hopefully soon, tipping will be eliminated for good and a server's wage won't depend on the whims of the customer. If you enjoyed this story, then wait for our next story starting in 10 seconds. Wherever she went, she was being eyeballed. Is she still wearing that dress? She would hear them snicker in the hallways. It felt like everyone was watching her, whispering after she'd passed by and behind her back. It wasn't just the students anymore either. Some of the other staff members were darting their eyes over towards her during recess. Others were less discreet. Is she still wearing that dress? She'd heard 100 variations of that question, and she knew the day was coming when someone would call her out. It wouldn't be long before millions of people across the globe were asking the same thing. Her answer left them silent. Julia Mooney was an art teacher. She just turned 34 when she got the fantastic news that had been accepted to start teaching at the William Allen Middle School in Moorestown in New Jersey. It was her first choice of school, and she bought something that would soon make her new school start buzzing. It was a simple yet beautiful pebble gray jasminea dress which lay in its box on her bed. She was eager to start tomorrow, but she had more than a few reasons to be nervous too. She woke early the next day after a thankful night of good sleep, ready to tackle the world. She felt great in her new dress, as she dropped her twins off at kindergarten and congratulated herself on a good albeit expensive purchase. It was time to meet the kids. Her students would be the 6th and 7th grades, and she loved meeting them all, but as the day went on until the heat of the day started making itself known, Julia's skin started flushing a pretty but uncomfortable pink as the day grew hotter and hotter. She sought the comfort of the class air conditioner when to her horror she realized she was sweating through the dress fabric. Keeping her arms firmly tucked in at her sides to conceal the growing dark patches, she turned the unit to its lowest setting and hoped the day wouldn't get higher than its already stifling 90 degrees. The day seemed endless. Class after class brought still more students she had yet to meet. It felt as though she couldn't focus on each face or remember every name, and that didn't sit right with her, but what could she do? As the day mercifully came to a close, Julia sat in her car and reflected on her first day at the new school. Other than the wet material hugging her dress to her back, that is. She washed out her dress and left it to dry. Mrs. Mooney was back at school and more prepared to meet the day than she had been yesterday, and already she was making an impression on the students, especially the 13-year-old girls. It would take some of the other students longer to figure it out, But something about this teacher was different. Some of the more materialistic young ladies, the ones that expected designer labels for their birthdays, noticed Mrs. Mooney immediately. It wasn't long before Mrs. Mooney was the hot topic at William Allen Middle School, and it was all because of that gray dress. She had worn it every day that week, and more than the young girls were noticing, even some of the other teachers were starting to talk. Julia was just lucky that she hadn't been openly confronted by anyone yet, but she knew it was coming soon, and teenagers can be incredibly cruel. Pretending not to hear the whispers and muffled laughter, Julia steadfastly continued to teach. When she noticed the other staff members avoiding her or treating her a little differently, she didn't take it to heart. She knew exactly what was going through their heads. She knew she had to play it cool for a while longer, so she put her head down and threw herself into her work. When the third week had come and gone, it looked like some people were about to burst from curiosity. She could see the question driving everyone crazy, and she knew it was finally time to tell the story behind the gray dress and why she wouldn't wear anything else. The entire school was dying to know. This entire elaborate plan that drove her whole school crazy with curiosity had been carefully planned out right from the start. The gray dress had been chosen with a very specific purpose in mind. I'm walking down the halls and they're like, "Is she still wearing that dress?" And as more and more people noticed. Despite being whispered and gossiped about, it made Julia smile. I needed to pick a dress that was going to be versatile because I'm going to be wearing it through the winter, and when we started the school year it was 90 degrees, she explained. When the first student asked the much-anticipated question, Julia was ready with an answer. Why had she worn the same dress for so many weeks? Well, the answer was waiting for them on Instagram. It was the very first post on her Instagram page, and it was called, "One Outfit 100 Days, said this, for at least 100 days I'll be wearing this dress, through ceramics projects, blizzards, whatever." Boring? Sure. I love to express myself through what I wear as much as the next American. This is a challenge. Now everyone knew why, but they were even more baffled. What were her reasons behind this strange decision? The most obvious reason behind wearing anything for such a long period of time is simple. It saves a lot of time. When raising 2 toddlers, anyone would want to make their lives easier, so living a minimalist lifestyle makes sense. She no longer had to choose what to wear every day, nor did she have mountains of laundry to do either. She did have tons more time to spend with the people she loved though. Her reasons are not just superficial either. Julia has a message for consumers that goes much deeper. It's something called slow fashion, something which Julia believes in wholeheartedly. The antithesis which everyone knows as fast fashion, cheap, trendy fabric and clothing that is cost-effective but unfortunately doesn't last long, so you buy more and more. We demand lots of clothes cheap, so retailers have to produce in foreign factories where US labor laws don't protect workers, Julia explains. Slow fashion, on the other hand, promotes good quality and fair labor practices, and Julia is very concerned with another problem that seems to be happening more and more. There is such a huge demand for cheaper clothes, and that leads directly to underhanded business practices being implemented overseas. Practices like employing underage workers with little to no laws in place to protect them. Julia believes that by buying less we can lessen the demand for cheap child labor. Still, Julia has even more great reasons that she wants to share with her students. Julia is a conscious consumer. She knows the impact that the clothing industry has on the environment. She's wary of unsustainable environmental practices that use up Earth's valuable resources. It takes an unbelievable 713 gallons of water to make a traditional cotton t-shirt, while a polyester t-shirt doesn't use as much water, but its manufacturing process expels twice as much carbon dioxide. Julia avoided adding to her carbon footprint by choosing to buy a fair trade hemp dress from a London-based clothing company called Thought. So, what did people think when she revealed her reasons? Strangely, the most common reaction is unfounded disgust, with some people wrongly assuming that wearing the same piece of clothing every day is simply not hygienic, and her answer to those people is rational enough. I just tell them, this is not a project about hygiene. I wash it as needed. I come to work clean. Lots of people wear uniforms and they are not assumed to be dirty. Do we really need so many new outfits? Are we just perpetuating a culture that defines us based on what we're wearing rather than what we're doing? What if we spent our energy trying to be good, interesting humans instead of trying to look good and interesting? Luckily, more people were supportive after hearing Julia's message. Soon, some of Julia's pupils and colleagues were following her example, with 17 teachers joining her cause, including her history teacher husband, Patrick, who wore the same shirt for 100 days, too. Soon, local news stations caught wind of the teacher's story. Julia's Instagram quickly skyrocketed with comments and she gained over 6,500 followers. All for integrating sustainable strategies into everyday items. What a movement this teacher started, one supporter wrote. I like to wear clothes. I like to express myself. I know that we are all looking at what the other person is wearing, Julia said in an interview. To wear the same thing every day is uncomfortable because we have this deeply ingrained cultural expectation to change every day. It's weird, but because it's weird, it's making us all think. What do you think about Julia's cause? Could you take the challenge and wear the same outfit for 100 days?